You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hey everyone, I am Miss.
And I'm Ryan, and welcome to the first episode of Iterators of the Imperium. Miss, did you ever hear the tragedy of Magnus the Red?
No, I never heard the tragedy of Magnus the Red.
Well, you're not gonna for a while. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Oh god, don't tell me something like far into the future.
Oh, it really is. We've got a while till we get there. But it is the most tragic part of this story.
Alright, then let's get to it.
So, as of today, and as of this recording now, we are starting our podcast about Warhammer 40k. First thing we need to make clear is, do you know what Warhammer is?
Well, vaguely no.
Okay, so there are three types of Warhammer, just so you know, right? There is Fantasy, there is 40k, and there is Age of Sigmar. Now, Fantasy is basically what you would assume. It's like Lord of the Rings style stuff. You got humans, you got elves, you got... For some reason, I'm pretty sure those just French humans are a faction. Not really sure why. You have orcs, you've got chaos, and you've got big centaur monsters and stuff. And it's all in like a medieval fantasy world of magic, and vampires are another one for some reason. I'll be honest with you, fantasy was never very popular, and they kind of gave up on it at some point and rebooted it into Age of Sigmar. So Age of Sigmar is a similar concept, that it's in a fantasy-style world. The actual lore behind its existence, I believe, is very complicated, and I believe the storyline is significantly better than fantasy was. But we are not looking at either of them with this podcast. We are doing Warhammer 40k. So that is Warhammer in the year 40,000.
Bruh.
Yeah, we got a while till we get there.
I mean, I can eat healthy and stuff like that. I will never live to see that thing. And I'm a healthy guy, you know, so...
Oh, you are!
Dang it.
Yeah, so, just to be very clear, this is purely about Warhammer 40k, because I don't know much about the other two.
Great.
Yeah. So, the next thing you need to know is what Warhammer actually is. Because the basis of it is a battle simulation game that you play on tabletop with miniatures.
Oh.
Yeah. So you've got little models of the troops that you use.
Yeah, I mean, from my limited knowledge that you have briefed me about, like, very, very, I just want to put that out there, like, very short brief. I thought it was, like, a digital game, like, only.
There are digital games, but they came later. It is like, first and foremost, a tabletop game with the miniatures. Some people just collect the miniatures, though, because they're very cool models. You have to build them, paint or prime them, paint them, all this kind of stuff. So some people have that as a hobby in itself. Some people only play the game. Like, some people will buy pre-made and painted models and only play the game. Most people, I would say, do both. Or, yeah, to some degree.
All right. Sounds cool. And expensive, but cool.
Very expensive. Dear God. After I bought my first set of models, my friend who's into it took it upon himself to tell me after I'd bought them that they were referred to as plastic crack. So that's good to know.
Plastic crack?
They're addictive, apparently.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Let me see. So advanced people are going to 3D print them themselves, right?
Oh, there are some people that do it. They do custom models and stuff. Yeah.
Ooh.
I
mean, I would get into that if I like this. I would get into that.
I'm tempted to do it. I've got a 3D printer.
What you do?
Yeah. I think scale is an issue with that, though, because I don't know how well you can print things as small as they need to be for the models for the game with a 3D printer.
Well,
I just don't know the capabilities of that.
I mean, the technology is advancing, Ryan. Just give them time.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the next thing you need to know is just about the game itself, the way it's played. So every character that you use, every model of troops or whatever, have different rules of how they work. Some things are decided with dice rolls. Some things are like skills the characters have that you can use. And movement and health are based on what type of troop it is, and so on and so forth. There's a whole set of rules that come with each type of unit, and it is up to you what units you use when you play. So every troop or every unit you might have, every miniature that you might have, has a value, and it's basically just how strong they are and stuff like that. Or it's based on stuff like how strong they are, how healthy they are, how useful they are as a unit. They will have a higher value. And what you will do is you will set a point maximum or a point limit for your army that you can field in that battle. So each person will agree to do 2,000 points, for example, and you'll end up with a whole army on the field, and it'll be a long played game. Or if you want something a bit quicker, you can do 1,000 points, so you have smaller armies, but you'll still get a lot going on. Or if you're new to it, it's recommended to start with like 500 points, so you still get the feel for the game, but you're not at it for like 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a hard pill to swallow, especially for someone like me who literally knows nothing about this.
Exactly.
When you said that many hours, I was just like, you know what, Ryan, stop the recording. I'm going to bed. Like, I don't want to partake in this.
Yeah,
but it sounds intriguing. Intriguing.
It's large scale. It takes a bit of commitment, I believe. There is another game mode, just as an example, called Kill Team, which the idea of it is it's like one military squad against one military squad. Rather than armies, it's just like one small platoon. So it's I think it's about 10 to 12 units that field, and it's on a very small battlefield. And the idea is it's the same kind of concept, but it's very quickly played. So there are different scales of play for the actual game itself. There are other forms of the game too. So there is a pen and paper version, a role-playing game version, like Dungeons & Dragons. There is a Warhammer format for that. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, but you don't want to deal with the miniatures, for example, you can still be involved in playing something within the world that has that same kind of tabletop vibe.
Okay, so you don't have to be a millionaire to play this, right?
No, not at all. There's different ways you can do it.
Great.
There are video games too. There's quite a lot of them. Some of them are... For the most part, they are like war games, like XCOM, where you just control troops on like a gridded battlefield, stuff like that. Which is I think is about as close to the actual gameplay as you could get in a video game.
Okay.
Yep. There are grand scale ones like Total War style games where you're controlling a whole civilization and armies on like a global scale. Those games are way too complicated for me. I've never got the hang of them. But
I mean, me too. You already know this.
Yeah, they are also set in Warhammer Fantasy, not 40k. That's another important detail.
Okay.
Yeah, because 40k is spacefaring, so the scale would be way too large to be able to do something like Total War. Unfortunately, hopefully one day we get a good game out of it. And there's a game that I have to mention because it is just incredible. Blood Bowl is Blood Bowl. Like Super Bowl.
Oh, God. Okay,
It is American football played using Warhammer fantasy troops.
Oh
there is an actual game version of it, and there's a video game version of it. I've played the video game. It's just like elves drop kicking orcs and stuff for a ball. It is hilarious and an absolute nightmare at the same time. It's just carnage.
For God's sakes, Ryan.
We might play that at some point. That'd be good fun.
That would actually be quite funny to, I mean, not just listen to, look at as well. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, and I would say that the last thing about this kind of stuff is the books. So there is an immense storyline to Warhammer 40k. It sprawls the entire galaxy and slightly beyond. It is unbelievably complex, and it is incredible. It is possibly the most interesting series I've ever read. It takes place in loads of different sections. There are like standalone short novels. There are whole series that are like 58 books long, stuff like that. Overall, there's over 350 books. Just so you know,
holy.
There is a lot to this universe. They have done a very good job expanding it. And you also have what are called codexes. So every faction in the game has a codex, or either that or they are making them as they go, because it takes a long time to produce these things. And while the codex tells you about the faction and some of their lore, it also provides all the rules for fielding their units in the game. So it's kind of a rule book in a way, although there is actually a separate rule book for the game, but it doesn't necessarily tell you everything about every unit because new units are constantly released. So the codexes are faction specific, and they have the rules for each character and stuff in it, as well as some storyline. So as you can tell, there is a lot to this.
I mean, my mind right now is just like, it sounds interesting, but god dang, how are you going to ease me into this, Ryan? Ooh.
Well,
see, that's the question.
I figured out there was 2 things you needed to know for us to get started with this, right?
Okay.
So what I need to do here is I need to explain to you the basics of the universe, so that down the line, when I'm teaching you about something in particular, and I mention some other culture or something like that, some other concept, you're not totally at a loss, right? So there's a couple of basic things. I set this into 2 sections. I set it into factions, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what each of the major factions in the universe are. So that if I'm telling you about something that happened with the humans, and I go, hey, and then there's the orcs, you don't go, what the hell's an orc? So we need to give you a bit of a backstory or a bit of an idea with them. And the other one is the warp.
The what?
The warp.
The warp.
The warp.
Okay, the warp. Let's get it.
That's what we're going to start with, because factions are a pretty box standard concept to wrap your head around. The warp is a bit different.
Great. It sounds funny. I like the word.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, to get started, the warp is like a parallel dimension to ours, right? But they're linked. It's like a mirror to ours in a way. The warp is a dimension of basically pure energy. But things that happen in our universe affect the warp. They cause the energy to shift different ways. Emotions affect it as well. So, grand scale of emotion. So if an entire culture is going through some major emotional turmoil, the warp gets a bit messy, a bit chaotic. And if that happens, it can have effects on our universe too. If the warp gets too chaotic, too overexcited, too much going on, the energies kind of crash together like waves, stuff like that. And it can cause stuff that shouldn't happen to occur in our universe. So while they are separate entities, they are severely linked and not necessarily completely separated. So our universe can affect theirs and vice versa. Okay? You with me so far?
Yes.
Cool. So this next bit gets a bit messy. This is where you start to get an idea of what's going on in Warhammer 40k. Because I'm going to be honest with you, grim dark is the term used to refer to this universe. Everything is terrible. Grim dark. Everything's grim. Everything's dark. Everything's terrible.
Oh god! I mean, I can relate to that in real life. So
yeah, exactly.
Give it to me.
So,
oh no, that was sad. I listened. Let's continue.
If enough turmoil is caused in the warp, and this has happened 4 times, if enough turmoil is caused in the warp by whatever happens to cause it, the energies can become so chaotic and so so excited, I guess, for lack of a better term. There can be so much going on in the warp that the energies eventually culminate into a sentient being.
What?
Yeah, and it's made of basically pure energy infused with, excited by a particular cause. So the creature that is created from it takes on a form based on the thing that caused it. So these creatures, the 4 creatures that came out of this, are called the Chaos Gods, or the Ruinous Powers. Because the idea is they exist in this world and all they want is to cause chaos in ours.
Okay.
They are essentially beings of pure evil. But each one of them was created at a different point in history and created by a different causing effect. So they all take on basically being the god of a different thing. So the first that I'm going to mention is Nurgle. Nurgle is the god of death, pestilence, decay, stuff like that.
Some really grim stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Nurgle, the Great Lord of Decay. That's his actual title, I believe. Do you want to guess when he was created? See, I want to see if you can guess any of these.
Oh god. So how many years was it?
What do you mean?
Like you said, like they're living in 2000, like 4000, something like
the
far
year
out.
40,000, so we're 38,000 years in the future. So I'll tell you now, right? 3 of these gods would already exist now in our timeline.
Oh God!
Yeah.
All right. So one of them when I was born, in 94.
If only.
A certain event happened when I was born. I don't know. I would say the year 0 would be like, an obvious one.
Well,
right.
All right. So when I explain this one, you'll probably have an easier time guessing the others. So Nurgle, the god of death, decay, and pestilence, was born while humanity was going through the Black Plague. So many people were dying of disease and illness that it caused so much turmoil in the warp that it formed into a god based on death, decay, and illness.
Wait, so this story, this whole Warhammer thing, is tied up to reality as it is in real life right now, like real history.
Yes, aye.
Oi, that makes it so much more exciting. All right, go on.
Yeah. So the second god is Khorne, who is the god of martial prowess and blood. He's referred to as the blood god, but one of his things is martial prowess. These gods are all fed by people doing these things nowadays. So whenever something dies or decays or rots, it feeds Nurgle's power. So blood being spilled in martial combat feeds Khorne and makes him stronger. So Khorne was actually born during the medieval times for us, because knights and champions and all that stuff going on, wars being fought with honor, is what created him.
Yeah,
he's a pretty rad guy, by the way. He's all massive red spiky demons with axes and stuff. He's a cool guy. The third one is Tzeentch, which is possibly the most ridiculous spelling I've ever seen in my life. It's a very awkward one.
What did you say? Tzeentch?
Tzeentch. Tzeentch. Tzeentch.
Tzeentch. Okay.
Yeah. He is known as the Changer of Ways. He's all about sneaky, underhanded plotting and stuff like that, treachery and stuff. He's also, I believe he's also the god of magic in a way.
Like, let me guess, dark magic.
I honestly don't think it matters. I think all magic is dark in 40k.
I mean, I can do some card tricks. That's pretty magical. I'm just saying.
The reality is, by the time it gets to the year 40,000, if you do a card trick, you're beheaded. Like, that's the kind of stuff you're dealing with here.
All right.
Yeah.
But when I do my card trick, he feeds. So
yeah, he's into that. That works for him, yeah.
He's like, that was pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. He was born during the Renaissance era for us. I can't think exactly why that would be. I'm assuming it's something to do with the Borgias. I'm just going to blame Cesare Borgia and move on. He was a shady guy. And the fourth god, who actually only came into being in the year 30,000? No, not the year 30,000, sorry. The 30th millennia. So, like, it was near the end of the 30th millennia he came into being. And he is the god of excess, or the prince of excess, as he's actually titled. So, eating way too much sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever.
Greed.
That stuff all feeds Slaanesh.
Yeah.
Right? So these gods all exist to further their own cause and cause chaos within our world. And everything that we do, whether we're doing it for their sake or not, we are feeding them by doing these things. So whenever humanity goes to war against another culture, it's feeding Khorne, because we're fighting with honor. We're fighting with rules, in a way. When we just start nuking planets for a laugh, Khorne doesn't get anything from that. Nurgle does, though, because we just nuked people into oblivion. See, it's really hard to avoid making these gods stronger, because they cover most things.
Yeah.
So that's not a great situation, but those are kind of what we're up against in a way. So the next thing you know about the warp is the energy of the warp can be used in a lot of interesting ways. It essentially gives people magical powers.
Okay.
One way or another. Yeah?
No, I'm just talking about bite of a spider. You could are we talking that, or are we talking the kryptonite is my enemy? What
neither.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know anything. I've just got to tie it with what I know.
Yeah, that's fair. Right. So, for example, right? The warp being a different dimension to ours and being all messy and stuff, time and space work differently there. So we have technology that allows us to essentially travel into the warp and then back out of the warp. And you could do this to, say, cover a greater distance in a much shorter time. So we can use it as a way to like warp travel across the galaxy in a reasonable time frame rather than it taking several centuries. So that's one of like the most common uses that we do with it. It's very dangerous, by the way, because with all the chaos gods and stuff like that, the place is a demonic hellscape at this point. So it's very dangerous for us to do that. And a lot of the time it goes wrong. But if we didn't do it, we wouldn't get to travel anywhere. So, needs must.
To travel is to live,
That's basically it, yeah. Risk equals reward, damn it. We can also use the powers of the warp using certain people that have the ability to access this magic to communicate over long distances. So you can use like telepathic messages to people.
And that is not as dangerous, I could imagine.
Not at all as dangerous. There is a possibility people that are sensitive to the warp and are able to access its powers are easier to be affected by the powers of the warp, so the gods. So there's a danger of that. But if you're only really using it for communication or telepathy, it's not massively dangerous. You're not doing anything too complicated or too kind of risky with it.
Okay.
There are also combat uses of the powers of the warp. So there are some people that can use it to like throw energy blasts and lightning and stuff like that.
Holy. Okay.
Yeah, and equally there are people that can use it to make shield, like barriers and stuff. It's quite a broad spectrum thing. Depending on how powerful you are, you can do a lot of different stuff with it. If you're powerful enough, it's basically just your imagination can be the limit.
Okay, that sounds dangerous and very overpowered.
Exactly. Luckily, it's wildly dangerous for the user too, because you'll just get grabbed by Nurgle or something if you do it wrong.
All right.
So there was one extra thing that I added to my notes about this section that I wasn't going to mention, but it's quite a useful thing to know about. A blank is a thing that exists. So
what is a blank?
A blank is a creature that was born without a soul. The reason our emotions and death affect the warp is because our soul is linked to it. So when you die, your soul goes back to the warp. Stuff like that. A creature without a soul has no mirror in the warp. So it's like a kind of jamming area around them for warp powers. So people that have telepathy can't talk to these people with it. People, if you have the ability to use the warp for communication and you're standing next to one of these people, it might not work. They're like a jamming zone for the warp. It's very interesting. Also, they have a weird effect, right? If you're a normal human being or a normal person that has like no gift for the warp or anything like that, you don't use it for anything, you're just like a normal soldier, standing next to these people makes you feel kind of disgusting and creeped out. You just
so you feel disgusted and creeped out by yourself or by that?
Just by being near them. Like you get like chills down your spine and stuff. You just feel really uncomfortable being near them. Even if you don't know that they are a blank. You just feel weird being near them. Because it kind of has, it must have some kind of weird warping effect on your soul being in this like null zone that they provide.
Yeah, I mean, I know a couple of blanks in my life then. So, yeah.
No, those are just people you hate. It's a different thing.
Okay, I mean, okay.
But they have a much greater effect on people that are actually people that use the warp. If you're like warp sensitive and you do use the powers of it, being near them, being near blanks can actually be physically painful.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're a pretty good deterrent if someone starts throwing magic. You just get to walk over and be like, hey man, how's it going? And there's, oh.
So it is a bit of a kryptonite, huh?
That actually, yeah, blanks are kind of kryptonites for warp users. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were the kind of things that I had written down about the warp. So in future, if we talk about the Chaos Gods, you'll have an idea what's going on. If we talk about warp travel, you get an idea. It's dangerous, but it lets you go really far, really fast.
Yep, and it's necessary.
Yes, very necessary. You know,
and you can do it with telepathy as well, like messages.
Yep. You know that
because
they can fight
FaceTime
with it.
doesn't exist.
Exactly. What? Yeah. No. Apple got shut down a while ago. Don't worry.
No, Apple rules it now. Apple owns part of like 50% of the 4 cards. Like, come on. We all know this. Steve Jobs came back from the dead and okay, you know what? I'm going on a tangent.
Slanesh, the god of excess, is actually just Steve Jobs. Like, but don't you want the new phone?
Oh man, I miss Steve Jobs, man. He was a cool character. But yeah, go on.
I just never knew anything about the guy, man. I was totally unaware of him as a person.
Oh, I was a big fan of it. Oh, you know, that's a whole completely discussion for another
That's
time.
for a different podcast.
But yeah. But go on.
Okay, so that's the gist of what I wanted to explain to you about the warp. So the next thing is going on to the factions. So the idea is we're going to give you a rundown of just some details about the major factions within the universe that we're going to be dealing with. There are a lot of minor races, minor Xenos races as they're called. Xenos just being aliens.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of them, but we can explain them as they become relevant to what's going on. Just as an example, though, there's one called the Hrud, which are disgusting worm people, as far as I remember. And they have some weird ability to, like, warp time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're just an absolute nightmare to fight, and they turn up very rarely. But when they do, they usually cause a lot of trouble for, like, one group, and that's it.
So what you mean with, like, a lot of different races, you can kind of compare that a bit to, okay, I'm going to put it out there, a bit like something like Rick and Morty, you know?
Yeah,
or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Like
there's millions of different aliens.
Of race. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Just a lot of them are not major players for different reasons. Some of them aren't spacefaring, for example. So humanity just doesn't have to deal with them much. And if they ever do, they don't last long. Stuff like that. There's a few different reasons that a lot of the races just either haven't had time to develop or aren't evolving in a way that they would ever be relevant. Like, there's a lot of alien races that aren't even, like, humanoid or even, like, very sentient, but are still dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you dropped, like, a squad of unarmed humans on a planet that was, like, populated by nothing but giant wolves, like, they're not gonna hassle your space crusade, but they're still a trouble at the time, you know?
Yeah, it's a bad day no matter what.
Yeah, so there's kind of stuff like that. So a lot of the minor races turn up for like individual stories, but aren't necessarily important enough that they're going to come up very often.
Yeah, and also it's good for the whole universe because like if they need a new plot, a new thing, you know, you can always just create a character.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. You can just raise up one of the minor races if you need something interesting to happen.
Yeah. You know, a lot of good stories like that's the good formula for like a never-ending story.
That's it. Okay, so the first faction we're going to talk about, we're actually going to talk about humanity first. I kind of wanted to leave this till a later one because I didn't know exactly how I was going to explain it, but we're going to go straight for humanity. And just the reason I'm choosing this one first because there's a second one that's like a sub-faction of humanity. So I couldn't do them without doing humanity first. So screw it, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Humanity is actually referred to as the Imperium of Man because around the year 25,000, I believe. Let me check a note here. Around the year 25,000, a guy called the Emperor just turned up, unified humanity, and is now leading us on a crusade through the universe to take over every planet he can find.
As you do.
Yeah. So the Emperor is an immensely powerful person. This guy may as well be a god with the power he wields. He is unbelievably smart and unbelievably strong and powerful. He's also extremely powerful when it comes to magic as well. For the record, the term for people that can use the magic of the warp are called psychers. Like psychic, but psycher.
Yeah.
So that's how they're doing. So he's also an immensely powerful psycher. So this guy actually wields godlike power and was able to unify humanity to one cause under the banner of the Imperium of Man, and then has set us on a course of galactic conquering. So he also set in a belief, I guess, for lack of a better term, called the Imperial Truth when he took over. The Imperial Truth states that humanity is destined to rule the stars. It also has a thing about no religion.
Yeah.
So I think there's a book called The Last Church, and there's a quote from the Emperor, which is something along the lines of only when the last brick from the last church falls on the last priest.
What?
Yeah, basically this guy is like, no religion. Because it draws away from the idea that humanity is meant to be in charge. There is no higher being. There are no gods. There is only science and fact. And that is the way we need to move forward for things to go the way he wants. We need to conquer everything because that's our destiny. Gods have no say in the matter. There is no like will of the gods or any of that. It's only us, and we're doing this. So the Imperial
and everybody's backing him.
What? Oh yeah, all of humanity is behind this guy from Earth anyway. I've just sent you a picture of the guy. The thing is, at the time he did this, humanity was scattered. We had been colonizing planets and lost communication between everyone. So a lot of planets ended up dying out. A lot more of them ended up totally separated from Earth and the rest of the colonies. So the conquering thing is also reuniting all the lost planets. Not all of them want to rejoin, because not everyone believes in the Emperor, because he wasn't around before they lost communication with everyone. So they just, one day, they couldn't talk to any other planet anymore, couldn't get to any of them or anything, and then suddenly, centuries later, this guy turns up leading an army and demands that he's in charge of humanity. Not everyone gets with that idea.
No, I could imagine. I would be pissed.
Yeah, so like we're not only, or humanity isn't only battling aliens to take over their planets and stuff. It's also sometimes subjugating humans that don't want to rejoin. So they basically just pummel the military forces till they surrender, and then instate their own governors to raise the planet back up, but under these beliefs.
Yeah.
Also, they wipe out any religion. You're not allowed religion. Like, they'll blow up churches and stuff. No religion.
Yeah.
If you
and
pray, you get shot. Like, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, they hit people with bricks.
Basically, yeah. From churches.
Yeah. Exclusively.
Exclusively. So, the way that the Emperor has done this is with primarily two things. One are, as I've just sent you a picture, standard human guardsmen. So the guardsmen are just a normal military force. They have advanced weaponry. They use laser guns. So las rifles or las pistols are the standard. There are also tanks and all that kind of nonsense. But your standard infantry are these guardsmen. They will send billions of them into wars and not expect a single one to come back.
Okay, so wait, hold on. So we're talking about stormtroopers here. How many are there?
I think at one point there was something like 3 trillion people on Earth or something like that. So, like, there's a lot of these guys.
Yeah, because like when you said how many they put out, like just in battles, expecting the one to get back, like how big is the human race at this point? Because like right now, what are we in? I was about to say Denmark, but in the real world, like
over 7 billion.
I would like 7.5 or something like
something like that. Yeah. Well, you gotta remember, humanity at this point has conquered a lot of planets, so it's not just Earth that's providing these troops necessarily.
No, we couldn't be here, all of them.
Yeah, so there are a lot of basic soldiers being trained and produced all over the galaxy for the sake of the crusade that we're on. But they really aren't up to what they're fighting. So they basically just amount to cannon fodder most of the time.
A bit like Lord of the Rings style here.
Yeah. Okay, there are a couple of exceptions to that thing of them being cannon fodder. So there are a couple of specialist types of guardsmen.
Okay.
So I've just sent you a picture as a reference. These are what are called Kriegsmen. They come from a planet called Krieg. This planet was being taxed heavily with troops. They were being asked to send more and more troops all the time for the sake of the war. And eventually their governors were just like, we don't need the Empire. We can just like handle ourselves. So they just refused to like send the troops and just went on their own. But then civil war broke out pretty quickly, because obviously. And they eventually just nuked themselves into oblivion.
Great.
So the planet ended up still with troops underground in bunkers and stuff. So people survived in these bunkers for long enough that the radiation died down to like a vaguely survivable level. But the troops all have to wear special armor and wear gas masks all the time and be on their planet. But they eventually just went back to war on their irradiated hellscape planet after the radiation died down. But it was like trench warfare, like World War II. That's how these guys fight, with tactical shovels and stuff. And they all basically just fight like it's World War II. It's great. But they are just normal humans. They're just guardsmen that live on a terrible planet. But one of their leaders, the one who nuked them, actually ended up winning the war and took the planet back. So it is an up and running planet again. It's just still basically pretty irradiated.
Yeah.
And they are still sending troops out into the war. So there are troops of Kriegsmen, like squads of them, amongst the normal guardsmen. But Kriegsmen are typically sent to what are called death worlds. They're just worlds that are guaranteed your death. Either every creature there is like it's from Australia and will poison or murder you, or the planet's way too hot, or it's way too cold, or it's way too radioactive, or the atmosphere's poisonous. Whatever it is, if the planet wants to kill you before any of the people there do, send people like the Kriegsmen in, because it's what they deal with best. You know what I mean? This is their gimmick. So they're not specialist troops or they're not spec ops troops or anything, but they are specialized to the worst environments possible. Yeah. And they're good at what they do. Do you know what a commissar is?
Commissar?
Yeah.
I would lie if I said that I did.
Okay. Amongst a platoon of troops, you will usually have a commissar who is kind of like a sergeant, I guess. He's kind of like a slightly higher ranking member. And his job is to command the troops to fucking go and fight.
Okay, yeah.
Kriegsman commissars are typically tasked with trying to prevent the troops from running in so quickly that they run out of troops. Because Kriegsmen will not wait to weigh up the odds. They will run in regardless of how likely the death is. Because they just do not care.
Okay.
So guardsmen are typically cannon fodder. There are a few specialist types of them. There's a group that all basically just look like Rambo. They're from a planet that like everything on it will eat you. And they all basically are just tanks and they're all like Rambo and they're great. But then the other side of it is guys like the Kriegsmen that are great for hostile environments of like a different type.
Yeah.
So beyond the guardsmen, the Emperor needed something beyond a normal soldier, let's say. Because aliens are way more powerful than humans are typically, right? A normal guardsman, yeah, exactly. A normal guardsman can't stand toe-to-toe with basically any alien race and live very long. So he needed something better. So he genetically engineered super soldiers.
Oh, I should do.
These guys have a buttload of extra organs, and they stand about 7 feet tall standard.
Bruh.
Yeah, they are built like an absolute tank of a man. Getting punched by one of these guys is like getting hit by a truck.
So it's basically like a 7 feet Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime with 4 or 6 arms and stuff like that.
No. They're still a normal human. I'll send you a picture of one in his power armor. But they stand 7 feet tall.
God.
Like, on average, they're still humans, so there's a variation in height and build and stuff like that, obviously. They're genetically altered, they're not clones like stormtroopers. So they all have personality, they're all normal people. They're just gigantic. But
I just thought you meant like with different limbs, like
no,
more arms and
no.
It's still humans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're just tanks. Everybody's a tank.
Yes. So for example, they have 2 hearts. They have extra organs put in that give them like growth hormone boosts, which is why they grow so big and their muscles grow so fast and so well. But
I can see.
because of the sheer size of them, that's why they need 2 hearts to keep them properly fed with blood.
I could imagine larger brains.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. They have like special eye implants so they can see in basically pure darkness and through fog and everything like that. They have like specialized things on their lungs so that they don't succumb to poisons and stuff like that. they have this weird membrane that produces like a waxy seal on their skin so that they can survive in the vacuum of space. It like very rarely comes up, but like you never know.
I mean, it is a nice like if you by any chance have to be in that situation, you'd be glad that you have that.
Yeah,
ability.
exactly. It's like when they're cutting you open and adding it in, you'd be like, this one feels unnecessary. And then like fast forward 10 years, someone tears half your armor off and airlocks you into space, and you're just like, well, that was handy.
You know, it has a nice tinkle to it.
Yeah. One of the interesting mods that they get is they all have this. I think it's called the Black Carapace. It's like this polymer thing that's put under your skin, your entire body, and it's what your armor joins onto. So it has like your armor is like power armor that has actual nerve connections. So you can see like the heads up display and everything on it, and it's all like fed into like your body's actual running.
I know I draw similarities to other series and films and movies, stuff like that. It's a bit like Avatar, right?
It is a little bit like that, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. But even without the armor, that guy is still a force to be reckoned with. But the armor is like almost impenetrable by a lot of things.
Yeah, but also without the armor, I would be terrified if like a naked 7 feet tank was running at me.
Yeah,
like no armor at all.
I think I'd rather get hit by him with armor on than without it. To be honest, I'm gonna die regardless. I don't want to die seeing that running at me.
No. I don't want to be traumatized at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
Mentally scarred.
So, just as a thing, the standard weapon of one of these guys is the gun that you can see in that picture. It is a gigantic gun called a bolter. It fires 40mm shells, I believe. It might be 70, actually. But it fires large-ass shells that are explosive.
Wait, 40... Wait, whoa, hold on.
Yeah. The rounds this thing fires are like 2 inches wide.
Bro.
Yeah, it's like getting shot with a brick. Which then explodes.
Yeah, that's not a nice day.
Yeah. So like you can tell how strong this guy has to be just because the sheer kickback on that. And they fire this thing at like full auto when they want to.
Full auto, so it's not even like a single shot handgun.
Nah.
It's just like a full-on automatic.
Yeah.
Come with me if you want to leave.
This thing is deadly beyond deadly.
Yeah, because the person behind it was not overpowered to begin with.
Of course, yeah. You gotta give them a weapon that matches, man. Honestly. So these guys are known as Space Marines or Adeptus Astartes. So Astartes is the actual name for them. They were originally the Legio Astartes, because it's the Legion of Space Marines. And the Legion was the army the Emperor made. Because he made, I think it would have been, it would have been like a solid 2 million of these guys or something that he made to start unifying the galaxy. But they were split up into legions of 200,000. Or there was 20 legions of 200,000. I don't know how many there were to begin with. Or thereabouts, it's roughly. There is one legion that's known for having a lot more. But each group has a special design to the armor and a particular name. And they had their own leadership, obviously. But everyone answers to the Emperor. But the idea was you could send an army of 200,000 of these guys to go handle totally different things. And no one is messing with an army of 200,000 of these guys.
No.
So no matter what you tell one legion to do, it'll get done. Even then, you can break them down into smaller groups beyond that as well. Because 1,000 of these guys will take out most things.
I was about to say, like, real life situation, like, you know, again, real life, you can just put, like, 2 or 3 of these dudes and they could conquer the world.
Exactly, yeah. So against aliens, 1,000 will usually handle a city, stuff like that. But they were in these legions that all had special names, like the Luna Wolves, the Blood Angels, the Dusk Raiders, stuff like that. And they had their own coloring. So the picture I sent you, the guy is in blue and gold, which is a very typical coloring. It's one of the ones you see a lot. But that's only the coloring of one particular legion.
So there's ranks to this too, like there's levels to it. So like, I could imagine, I see a theme with like golden armor. So completely golden armor of these kind of guys are just like, you know, stuff. You don't want to mess with them.
No. So if you are, for example, Ultramarine, if you're a member of the Ultramarine Legion, your armor will be primarily blue. If you
So like this.
are a member of the Dusk Raiders, it'll be primarily black, I believe. But it's just their coloring, so you can identify which legion they belong to. They get like different heraldry on the armor, so like the shoulder guards get different symbols and stuff like that, depending on rank. But the armor colors don't change much. Some of them, they change the trims and stuff on it, will get like altered slightly, but primarily the coloring is just to show the legion rather than a rank.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, actually, to be honest with you, that's about all I really need to explain about humanity for the sake of this, because there's a lot more to it. There is a huge amount more to them, but like we'll get into that when story gets to that point, because it's much more fun to do it that way. Also, we'll be at it all day if we don't move on. The rest of these are a bit faster, luckily. So the second one, I mentioned that there was a sub faction of humanity, which is like a faction in itself. So I wanted humanity first. So this group is called the Mechanicum, or the Mechanicum of Mars. So on Mars, before the Emperor started unifying all of humanity, Mars ended up on its own and kind of sorted itself out and kind of set up its own government and everything like that. Because Mars is as terrible as it is, and it was just like a sand hellscape, they had to rely on technology to survive, for food and water and everything like that. They had to rely on it. So the people that knew how to fix the technology ended up being really well respected, and then that advanced to being revered, and then that advanced to being essentially worshipped as priests.
Okay.
So eventually a religion developed. So they're actually referred to as the cult Mechanicus, and they believe that there is a god called the Omnisire. No, it's not the Omnisire. No, it's the machine god. And then there is a prophet called the Omnisire that they believe will come one day. There is a whole set of nonsense that goes with this, but the idea is they are obsessed with technology, and they believe all knowledge in the galaxy already exists. So they don't invent stuff; they just learn about things that already exist, and they maintain the higher technology, the tanks and war robots and stuff, for humanity's crusade. So, although the Emperor was like, no religion, and then he found these guys and we're like, okay, one religion, but no one else is allowed to join.
Only when it benefits me, you know?
Basically, yeah. It was one of those things where, killing them, he could have done it, but it would have been less use than it was worth.
Yeah.
So he just kind of leaves them to do their own thing. Don't talk to me about it, and don't tell people about it, but, just keep it to Mars, guys.
Yeah, but rest assured, if you start acting up, I will hit you with a brick.
That's the gist. Yeah, he's like, look, we've got an understanding here. I need you, but I don't need you that much. So keep it in line. And yeah, they're priests. So their tech guys are quite well known for replacing parts of themselves with machinery. So they all look pretty nuts, I'll be honest. A lot of them have spider arms and spider legs and extra bits and stuff and weird ocular eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah, like Terminator on steroids.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Robot-wise, yeah.
Yeah, they're all trying to turn themselves into cyborgs, this whole thing.
Yeah.
So the next race I'm going to go on to is actually an alien race. We're getting into the alien stuff now. So the next one is the Eldar. These guys have been around for a real long time. I'll be honest with you, they're the elves of Warhammer 40k.
Okay.
They're not actually elves, but they may as well be elves. Okay. They are weirdly elegant in everything they do, and they are extremely warp sensitive. So a huge amount of their race are psychers. So they are a serious threat in battle. They have a lot of much more advanced technology than humanity does because they've been around for so much longer, and a lot of their stuff is aimed more towards the warp in some ways as well, because they have so much more mastery over it than we do.
Yeah, I gotta know. So these would be weak towards blanks, right?
Yeah. That is an accurate thing. Yes, blanks would be a good way to go against these guys. Obviously, they fight with weapons as well. The picture I sent you, the guy's got a sword and a gun, but a lot of their race is very good at using the warp. So like a lot of them, it's second nature, so they will like have like a sword and also use the warp and stuff like that. So while blanks would be a big help, they're not necessarily like the key to defeating them.
No.
But they are a strategic advantage a lot of the time. So I'm not going to go too much into these guys because we're going to talk about a bit of storyline with these guys that'll set them up pretty well. Pretty early on in this podcast, because it's, early storyline, these guys are pretty important.
Yeah.
There is one other thing I'm going to explain, the webways. So these come in really early on, but these guys have access to a thing called the webways. You know, I explained that we travel through the warp, and it's all kind of dangerous and stuff.
Yeah.
The webways are like permanent tunnels through the warp that are perfectly safe. So you'll have a big gateway on one planet, you walk through it, you're in the warp, you follow a little tunnel for a bit, and you come out another big gateway on another planet at the whole other side of the galaxy, and you were perfectly safe the entire time.
But why don't people do that exclusively then?
Because they didn't make them. The Eldar aren't the ones that created the webways, they just have access to them. They just have the portals on their planet. So they make use of them, but they don't have the ability to make them. So the storyline of where they actually come from and stuff like that is really early on. We will get to that pretty damn soon. But, so the Eldar having access to that is a big help for them. It's really important. Just to give you an example of what it's like. Us using the warp is like trying to scuba dive blind through a cave that is in total darkness and there are sharks all around you. The Eldar using it and walking through the webways is like, in aquariums where they have those tunnels that, like, you're in the glass tunnel and there's sharks swimming above you and stuff.
Yeah, I used to work at a place that had that.
Yeah, that's what the webways are like compared to it. They're just walking through all peaceful. They can see all the nonsense, but they can't get to them.
Enjoy the scenery.
Exactly. Massively powerful. Like, such a useful strategic thing, if done properly. And I believe they're the only race that has access to it, as far as we're concerned.
Okay.
So that's about as far as I'm going to go with Eldar, because like I said, we are going to get to them pretty early on in this. I just want to be able to go Eldar, and you're like, oh, the Space Elves, right. So the next one I'm going to do is the Necron. These guys are pretty interesting. They are a race of robots. Extremely advanced robots made of a thing called necrodermis. It's living metal. It's like made of nanites and stuff. And it is real strong stuff, and it can like repair itself and stuff like that.
Wait, so these are sentient beings?
Yes.
It's not just like AI,
No, not AI. Definitely not AI. They are actual sentient creatures that are robots.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Fully mechanical, mechanized bodies. And they have no souls, obviously, because they're robots. There is a whole storyline behind these guys, and they are still going at the moment, and we will get into them really early on as well.
Okay.
These guys are, I believe, the oldest race still kicking in the universe. The reason for that is things called tomb worlds. So their storyline is ancient, like before humanity ever existed by millennia. And then shit went down, and they sealed themselves all up in different worlds that they had hollowed out and filled with, like, essentially cryogenic stasis pods. So their entire race is split up amongst the galaxy in these, like, planets full of millions of them in these, like, cryostasis pods, all just asleep. Sometimes people will accidentally activate them, and then they just have an army of robots to fight.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Or sometimes they wake up on their own. The fact that they've been asleep for so long has some questionable effects on them. Like, sometimes they have degraded because the systems that keep them in one condition, that keep them in stasis, have degraded. So they start, like, wearing down and rotting, but not waking up. So some of them are coming out as good as they went in. Some of them are coming out in, like, degraded condition. Some of them are dying in it. And they are waking up both at random points, being woken up by other members of their race, or sometimes humanity will take over a planet that's barren and accidentally activate them and just get absolutely annihilated.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if it's one, or it's just like, there's a lot of them. If it's everybody on that planet.
The planets aren't necessarily inhabited by other people. They sometimes are, because they've been around for that long. but every single Necron that's in stasis is a robot. And they will all like wake up at the same time usually and stuff like that.
Oh, then it's much worse.
Yeah, because there's millions of them all over the fucking galaxy waiting to wake up, and they're almost unkillable because they're made of extremely powerful metal.
Yeah, I could imagine one of them is like a boss battle, and millions of them is just like
Yeah.
why even trying?
Yep.
So, yeah.
There's also like a tier list to them, so like the higher they were in like nobility and like command and stuff like that, or their military, the better their body is. So the more powerful they actually are. Yeah, so that's the thing. I would say the most kind of relevant detail about these guys is they don't have access to magic. They don't use the warp for anything.
Oh.
But
Okay, yeah, that's a big detail.
But they have technology on par with magic. Like they have people, I think they're called technomancers, who essentially are like sorcerers. They will be able to use technology to conjure storms and control time and stuff like that.
My. So basically magic.
Yeah, exactly. But one of their guys is just called like the Storm Lord, and he just uses the weather to mess with people and stuff like that. They're different, but they're wildly more dangerous than most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into those guys real soon, and you'll get their whole backstory because it's really interesting. You're gonna be really into it. It's a really good one. The next one we're going to go on to is, send a picture over, the Tau. So the Tau are one of the younger races. They're pretty new. They are genuinely just a xeno race, just an alien race, that are not massive on scale yet. They're a growing race.
I was about to say they kind of look like humans.
They're humanoid, but they do look a bit weird.
Yeah.
They have a caste system, right? So when they were still like a nomadic race living in like tribal forms, a bunch of them went to live in hot areas, cold or wet areas, up in the mountains, you know what I mean, stuff like that. And they ended up like evolving to suit their environment in different ways. So, as an interesting detail, the ones that went and lived in the mountains, it developed like a membrane between their arms and their body so they could glide.
Okay.
They could glide like sugar gliders, like sugaroos.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like they evolved in loads of different ways. And then they gradually developed as a society, and eventually a fifth caste appeared called the Ethereals and kind of unified them all. And now they've got into spacefaring and crazy technology and loads of other stuff. And they're becoming a major player now. But they are still quite young. They're not massively spread out yet. So the way the caste system works is you have the water, the fire, the air, and the earth caste. And each is by birth, because you're born in a caste based on genetics. You also have the ethereal, which is another caste. They all basically just have a different type of job they do amongst their society. So, like the air ones that could glide used to be messengers. Now they're like pilots and stuff, because they're really well suited to like zero gravity environments, stuff like that. The fire caste are the warriors; they're the soldiers. The earth class are like engineers, inventors, stuff like that, craftsmen, stuff like that. And the watercraft are like your charismatic ones; they're traders and stuff like that. Like ambassadors, that kind of thing. And the ethereals are like the noble diplomats that run the place and kind of lead everything. Honestly, I don't have a huge amount to explain about these guys because they're not one that I've took a particular interest in. So I'm going to be learning about these guys as we go on with this as well.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm excited about that actually. Because there's always more I can learn too.
Yeah, I mean, from the knowledge that I have of what you've told me the last hour, it's just like it is a big bite at one, one session. But it sounds interesting.
Yeah,
sounds interesting.
So we've only got a couple left, luckily. So the next one is the Orcs. Orcs are a pretty standard race in most things because they're orcs. They're big, they're green, they kill things,
Yeah, you don't even have to send a picture.
I'm sending a picture. You need reference for these guys.
They look ugly.
Yeah.
They look like an orc.
Right. So to tell you, I just need to specify what makes these ones different from the usual orcs, right?
Yeah.
In this, they are mycelia based. They are mushrooms.
I'm sorry, what?
They grow from spores, right? So the spores will land somewhere. They will grow into mushrooms, which will evolve into different tiers of the orc race.
Bruh.
So every orc grows as a fungus, which is just great.
That just makes it better.
Yeah, it's just fantastic, right? So that's like the first thing you do with these guys. So like the only way, I guess, to get rid of orcs is to burn a planet. Because killing them doesn't get rid of the spores. Like, if you have soldiers that like have been fighting on a planet with like an orc invasion, right? And they win, and then all those soldiers go back onto their ships and then go off to fight on other worlds, they just carry the spores with them from the battlefield onto the new planets until centuries later an assload of orcs erupt out of a cave because the spores just started growing. Like, once you've got orcs, you're not getting rid of orcs unless you just burn the place. It only takes time, man.
Is one of them kill it with fire before it lays eggs?
Basically, yeah.
Of eggs, it's just spores, that spreads.
So orcs have a clan system, so you just are part of different clans. And it's stuff like the Blood Axes is one of them, stuff like that. And they all just have a different thing that they like. So the Blood Axes are the ones that none of the other orcs like because they're not orky enough.
Okay.
Orcs are dumbasses, by the way. They spell everything wrong, they say everything wrong, but they know what they like. They like to fight, so that's what they do. So the Blood Axes, I believe, if I'm saying this right, I'm gonna check this, but I believe they are the sneaky ones. They plan, they use a bit of strategy, and that's not very orcish. Orcish is scream, run at them, and kill them. But because they'll wait till nighttime and then go in and murder them, or they'll sneak in and stuff like that. The other orcs are like, sneaky ones. They're the bad ones. They ain't orky enough. There's ones that are like melee specialists. There's ones that just like going real fast. Like, there's just one clan that's just all about going real fast. So they just build cars and put rocket boosters on them and stuff.
Okay.
So the last thing to know, like the really important thing to know about the orcs is they are not really able to use the warp magic, right? They are sensitive to it. They are like linked to it in like a pretty good way, but they're not like consciously able to use it much. A few people are. You get a few people that are like shamans that are able to throw it around a bit, but standard orcs is like never heard of. But they have a thing where, because they're all like psychically linked as a group, but subconsciously, if you have enough of them in one area, if they believe something, that manifests as their belief becoming real.
Okay.
So the fast orcs, the ones that like to go fast, they believe that things that are red go faster. So they paint like fire and stuff on their cars in red paint or with blood or something like that. And because they all believe it makes it faster, it actually does.
That's like me as a kid with Hot Wheels.
That's it, honestly. Paint some fire on the side, makes it go faster. But for orcs, it does.
I swear it did as well as when I was a kid, by the way. I'm with the orcs on this one, right?
It's just how they work. So they got this like weird backwards ass magic going on, which just works. Like half their weapons are just scrapped together junk, and because they think it works, it does. So much like that. They also have a thing called a WA. W, several A's and then GH. And basically, when enough orcs get together as a group, as a unified force, right, behind a war boss, which is just the biggest, toughest orc, they kind of get inspired to follow his cause. And that takes the form of this psychic bond that becomes a WA, as it's referred to, which makes them all stronger and makes them this ridiculous fighting force. Just out of this collective belief that they can fucking do it. So they're called orc WAs, which is basically just the noise of an orc throwing his fist in the air and screaming. So their magic is weird, and they don't really know it works, but it works in a really backwards-ass way.
Yeah. So these are the odd men out, right?
Well, there's one more that I think goes with them a little bit. So the next one, and I did this in order for a reason, is the Tyranids. The Tyranids are a nightmare come to life, honestly, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a picture. My first note on these guys is space bugs, because they're big-ass space bugs. There's some Starship Troopers nonsense, honestly.
That is some Predator-looking thing.
So, these guys are genuinely just sentient space bugs. They take loads of different forms of bugs. There's flying ones, there's small ones, there's big ones, there's everything. There's some of them that are spaceships.
Sorry, what?
Exactly.
Like,
yep, you heard
they are spaceships.
Yep.
Not Transformers.
No.
Like that kind of thing. They are literal. Okay.
There are bugs that are big enough and capable of going through space. So they are a hive mind. They all share one consciousness. So they are an incredible thing to fight against, because they will descend on your planet out in nowhere like a plague in crazy numbers, tear everything apart piece by piece. And obviously, as soon as you do something to fight against them, that's like a good strategy. As soon as one of them picks up on it, they all know about it.
Everybody knows about it. Yes.
Exactly.
So it's like one entity.
They are feral, they are ravenous, they are ridiculous in numbers. It is almost impossible to win a fight against them.
What would they call, like, dimwits?
The Tyranids.
The Tyranids. Yeah, sorry.
So, like, Tyranids.
I'm gonna call them dimwits.
Fair enough.
Dimwits.
So, weirdly, whenever they, like, ransack a planet, they kill everything that's alive, and then basically chuck it all into this pool of bubbling acid that melts it all down into, like, genetic goop, sends it back to their mothership, and then it, like, repurposes the genetic DNA to forcibly evolve the bugs that it's making into, like, better bugs based on the DNA it just got from the stuff it killed.
Yeah.
So if they ransack a planet that has, like, better lungs or something like that, all the new bugs have better lungs because of it.
I mean, they're just environmentally friendly, you know.
Well,
they reuse stuff, you know.
Well, yeah, but they also tear every bit of living organics from a planet. So, yeah, second half a dozen.
Double-edged sword.
What we need is another race that likes minerals to come in and harvest the planet after.
Sure.
Well, then it would be good. Then it'd be galaxy gradually run out, but like, yeah.
I've seen the picture, and there's no good option in this. No good option.
That sentiment right there is Warhammer 40k as a whole. There is no good option.
No.
It's only bad and terrible. Interesting detail about these guys: the shadow in the warp. So much like the orcs, the hive mind thing these guys have is like a psychic connection, which is kind of warp related, but not really. It's not a warp thing. It's still a similar kind of connection, though.
Yeah.
When they descend on a planet, they do it in such large numbers that connection blocks out the ability to use the warp on that planet. Not in the same way that a blank does. It's like it overshadows that planet from the warp. So you can, I don't know, use telepathy to communicate with anyone through the warp, to warn the next planet or anything, or to ask for reinforcements. So every time someone is attacked by the Tyranids, they're basically on their own, because they appear so quickly, and immediately you're unable to communicate with any other planets to ask for help.
Well, are these not like, you know, the toughest race then?
In a way, yes. I would argue they would be the worst one to fight. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can win any fight if you figure out well enough.
I mean, so it's one of the, like, they are not clever enough. What do you mean? Like humans in real life, like, we're not the strongest, you know, thing walking on this earth.
No.
Like, there's bears and stuff like that, but we can we utilize strength, brains, and all that stuff, you know, to be the superior thing. They lack in other aspects. These
yes,
right?
Aye, that's basically it. Yeah, there's a huge number of them, and they fight in a very particular way. But like, if you have enough troops, you can fight them off. Eventually, they'll back off because they know they're not going to win, or because it's costing them more biomass than they'll get. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, they work in weird ways. They seem to go for different planets for different reasons. So they will sometimes dodge planets that would have had biomass for, like, as far as humans are concerned, no reason. So we have a hard time figuring out what the hell they're actually doing a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. That just makes it harder to predict because you can't predict their moves.
Interesting thing. They don't. They can't travel through the warp. They don't have technology to do it because obviously they're all organic. They don't have technology. Do you want to know how they travel across the galaxy really quickly?
How do
they use the aliens they have that are spaceships have a weird ability to like change their own like mass so they can just weigh less or more at different times. And they basically use a combination of that and the gravity of celestial bodies to slingshot themselves across the universe.
Wait, slingshot themselves?
Yeah, they will cycle into a planet's orbit at an angle just enough that gravity grabs them and pulls them down, and then it like warps its own weight so it'll pick up loads of speed really quickly, and then it shifts it the whole other direction so that as they like crest past the planet, they will like then fire out of the pool of the gravity because of the speed they were going at, and now suddenly they weigh nothing and it just takes off across the universe like that.
Why do I have like a giant slingshot from Angry Birds with these guys' faces on just boop?
That's basically it, man, honestly.
Oh.
It's a very cool idea. It's like Mass Effect. They use the relays to change their mass so that their speed picks up incredibly. They basically change their own mass and then just use the gravity of a planet to give them momentum, and then they just take off.
Yeah.
Very cool idea. Very interesting. Okay, the last one is kind of a backtrack. The last race we're going to talk about, or faction we're going to talk about, is kind of a backtrack. Chaos is a faction.
Okay.
So, obviously, you know about the Chaos Gods. They fight us. So, they have demons. The Chaos Gods can basically choose to group together a little section of their power into a creature. And depending on how much they use, it'll be more or less powerful. So they can use a big amount and make a greater demon, and the demon embodies a design suited to the god that made it. So Nurgle's ones are all big and disgusting and rotting and pestilency, whereas Khorne's ones are all big, winged, horned demons with axes and stuff. Slaaneish's ones, because he's like the sex one, they like some of them can look like succubuses and stuff like that. They suit the god that creates them. So you can make greater or lesser demons and everything in the middle. And the lesser ones will be like little imp things that fuck around and piss people off and stuff. Or like little oozes and other nonsense like that. Whereas the greater ones are actual big monstrous beasts that are a nightmare to fight and can murder entire planets if they want.
Nice.
Yeah. And also, sometimes Chaos likes to try and fuck with us from the inside. So it'll find someone that's like, praying when they shouldn't be because the rules are no religion. And then Chaos will answer their prayers and then they'll think it's a normal god. So the person just goes along with it. And the next thing they're possessed by a demon or just doing evil shit because Chaos says so. Or Chaos will provide a soldier some of their power. And then the soldier is now weirdly powerful with crazy Chaos abilities, but is now evil. It's a whole thing. So there is a lot of this we will expand on in future. I have a little list of the first few topics I want to go through with this for future episodes. But I think that's enough of a base overview of the universe and stuff that you're going to deal with. That if I mention another race while we're talking about a storyline, you won't be totally confused. You've got some reference for most of the major stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Do you want to sign off there? I think that's enough for this one.
I think that's a good way to do it. Like we had the introduction, so now me and the listeners, by the way, especially the ones who don't know much about this or want to get more into it, we have a base now that we can work from. So yeah, I think it's a good place to sign off, and yeah.
Thank you for listening to the first episode of Iterators of the Imperium. We hope you'll come back for more, because we're excited about this. It's going to go on for a while, I think. All going well. So we will catch you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.